Hi there, I'm Justin Pritchard with another Used Ride Buyer's Guide, where today it's all about the Nissan 370Z and a few reasons why you might want to check one out as a used ride, and a couple of checks that you should make to help you find a used 370Z that's not concealing any problems or issues. So the Z that you're looking at here launched for model year 2009, and they're still selling it largely unchanged today. It's enjoyed a long sales life, partly since, once again, this latest Z is built to deliver a relatively attainable world-class performance motoring experience. Now, you could get a coupe or convertible, and all units were two-seat, V6 powered, and rear-wheel drive, so that you could talk drifting with your pals. Look for feature content including Bose audio, navigation, Bluetooth, climate-controlled seats, xenon lighting, and more. Power came from a 3.7-liter V6 with Nissan's VHR, or Very High Rev designation, thanks to a 7,500 RPM redline. Output for most models is rated around 330 horsepower, and transmission choices included a 6-speed manual or a 7-speed automatic with paddle shift, which actually isn't that horrible even if you don't typically like an automatic transmission. Owners tend to say that they like the looks, the exclusivity, the pedigree, and the all-around high-performance value, though limited space, the lack of rear seats, and a sometimes noisy ride were common complaints. Alright, so let's get into some tips and tricks to take with you into the test driving process if you're about to head out and maybe check out some potential new-to-you 370Z candidates. Now, this looks in general like a really solid performance car buy. In fact, one of the most reliable that I've come across, but there are still a few checks that you should consider, and maybe write these down and take them with you. First up, you'll want to confirm that the rear hatch is capable of staying open under its own power, and that it doesn't slam shut when you apply a slight downward force on the edge of that trunk lid. If it does, you'll need to change the gas struts which hold it up, and that should take about 4 minutes if you're mechanically inclined. Not a big deal at all. But also just confirm that that hatch release works as expected, both from your remote key fob and from the button above the license plate. So next, check down low and beneath the body for signs of excessive rust, paying attention to the underside of the Z, as well as the lower inner edges of the doors. And you can pull the weather stripping away from the inner lower part of the door to check for rust that might be hiding out under there as well. So if you're checking out a convertible, an inspection of the cabin for signs of moisture, mold, mildew, and the like is a good idea, as these could all indicate a leak. You'll want to cycle the roof through its open and closed positions a few times over the course of your drive, noting any unwelcomed binding, nasty sounds, or warning lights that may come up in the process. Inspect all of the rubber weather stripping where the top meets the windows and body of the Z convertible, ensuring that they're plump and full and intact and not crispy, weathered, cracked, or dried out, which can be an invitation for leaks. And now, since this one's a sports car and has likely been driven hard throughout its life, you're going to want to assume that any used Z that you're considering needs all of its fluids changed and a new set of tires and brakes and a new clutch, until you confirm otherwise by examining service records or inspecting every wearable component, possibly with the help of a mechanic. Now, most sellers aren't trying to pass off an expensive repair bill onto you, but some are, and now is the time to check. And so again, from an expectation standpoint, approach that used Z assuming that it needs kind of everything done, and work backwards from there until you confirm otherwise. You will also want to scrutinize the condition of the paint, noting that numerous owners have complained of poor durability from their vehicle's finish, which can be evidenced by premature chipping or peeling of paint in vulnerable areas like the hood edge and the front fenders. If you're going to be using your Z in weekend motorsports, maybe drag racing or lapping, you're probably best to go with a 2012 or newer model. And the reason why is that it had a better oil cooler installed from the factory that ultimately was a result of an issue where the car went into a sort of overheat limp mode when it was driven really hard for extended periods. Now, some owners of pre-2012 models install an aftermarket oil cooler to help fend off this issue. And that's kind of it. Most of the Z's more commonly reported problems should be fairly easy to spot on your test drive, and there aren't any major issues with major systems reported frequently enough to cause any significant alarm. Really, this is a solid-looking used sports car buy. But still, I'm going to finish with two things. First, unless you're like really up on the world of 370Z tuning, you're likely best to avoid buying a model that's been modified with anything more than sort of your typical intake and exhaust upgrades, because more serious modifications in some situations can cause problems and headaches and even reduce the longevity of the vehicle. And of course, remember too that in some situations, modifications can actually void any remaining warranty as well. And second, and remember this because this one's important, you can and should get a pre-purchase inspection at a Nissan dealer, which will run you something like $100 to $150, but you get a trained technician who's familiar with the vehicle, scrutinizing it from top to bottom, inside and out, and that's totally worth it if that $100 inspection reveals a $1,000 problem that you might be about to buy. Well, that's it for this time. I hope you found this video to be informative and useful, and if you did, I hope that you'll click that like button and also share this around with any friends and family who might be interested in buying a used sports car or a Nissan 370Z in particular. I'm Justin Pritchard. Thanks for watching.